You're listening to Negotiator, a podcast led by women of color from two generations, exploring what it means to negotiate power and possibility. With Gitanjali Ponnappa and Apa Gupta, you'll hear stories and strategies shaped by different life stages, all with one mission: to help you claim your voice and your future.
Hey, Abba, I have this little smile on my face because it's not even a smile, it's a grin on my face because I've actually been really looking forward to this episode. And I feel like we should get us started on this by me just saying what I have to say because it's going to sound judgy, but it's not well, no, it is. No, okay, anyway, I'll just say what I have to say. So this episode is about motherhood, and you will tell us why we're discussing motherhood. It's about money and it's about the cost to your career. So it drives me insane, like next level crazy, when I hear women say things like, touch wood, I don't need to work. It makes me so mad. And I want to scream back. I don't even want to be polite. I want to scream. And I want to say, yes, you do. You need to work. And then when people reply to me, oh, but you wouldn't understand, I really want to challenge them and say, try me. Give me the explanation so that we can have a debate about it. And I like to have this debate because I think it's an important one. Like you, perhaps, I come from a long line of strong, proud, hardworking women. My mother worked all her life. My sister-in-law, my brother's wife, she's a doctor. My niece, you've met her, Pranalini. I have several remarkable colleagues, women, female colleagues, all who work. Many have children because they know a work ethic is what we need. It's not just the money. And of course, we need the money too. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh, no, we only do it for the work ethic and we do it because it's good for us. No, it's also good for for our bank account. But there's something about motherhood that makes us so, I don't know, like, ooh, so cute, so reverent. We use words like, what a sacrifice to stay home. Or we talk about motherly instinct. We talk about, mama's presence, especially in Switzerland. You're definitely not a excellent mother if you are not fully present. And all of those words are valid. They all matter. I'm not saying that they don't. But what we somehow don't seem to talk about is about motherhood as a structure. We don't say motherhood actually changes economic power. So in Switzerland recently, there was a vote that passed that was about individual taxation, but the ultimate goal, perhaps, is that women can participate in the workforce even as mothers. So we rarely say that when you enter motherhood, you're changing your earning curve. You were doing this and then you do this. But we don't talk about that. And we talk about it more in terms of, oh, it's just 2 years, or it's till Kian goes to kindergarten. We talk about it in a boxed time frame, whereas the impact of it is much, much longer than that. Okay, sorry, that was just like I had to get it out, but you.
Yeah, firstly, it always surprises me that, we take the example of Switzerland, right? Because if anybody else is sitting anywhere else in the world, they would expect that the Swiss have it figured out. And, the more Swiss people I meet, the more I realize that that's actually not the case. And other countries have it actually better for mothers than Switzerland. For me, that's always interesting because, we always have that view of Switzerland of being somehow ahead of everything. But when it comes to this topic, not. But, just to start off and take let's say you said your judgy comment, I want to just ground this conversation personally for a moment. So the first thing why this topic, I guess, also came up between us is because I'm pregnant with my second child, and Kian is 4 years old at the moment. And it isn't the first time that we've had this conversation. We've talked about it even when Kian was born, and now we're talking about it again. And everything you said, it's been on my mind lately. But, just because I know I can feel mothers listening to you and getting really, really mad, because motherhood isn't an intellectual decision, right? And a lot of the time, we need to recognize that it is to a certain extent. Yes, you want to have a child, you want to bring up the child, but once you become a mother, it's so hormonal. The love you feel for your child, and the connection you feel, it just changes how you experience time, the concepts of time, the concepts of money, the concepts of attachment, responsibility, identity, all of it really affects that at a very basic hormonal level.
Mhm.
And the pull is real. I mean, I've been working since Kian was 1, and becoming a mother has changed me in ways that I didn't even realize was possible. It's how I relate to work and to myself. And it's not that my career doesn't matter, it matters, but it no longer holds my entire identity and my sense of self-worth, which I realized actually after I had Kian, that I was attaching to work quite significantly to tell me who I am, and what, my output was related to uh, whether I was doing well, what I was creating. And sometimes when when you become a mom, that is not the case because you're not. It's the experiences and the connection you have with your child. So, but motherhood doesn't really clock out. It's constant. So you're constantly doing something. And in any case, I mean, it's not about denying that reality, because it really does exist alongside those long-term consequences, which we will be talking about monetarily, which we don't talk early enough, of course. And here's what I keep noticing, at least in my circles and the conversations we have about motherhood. Uh, in my circles, when someone is planning a child, the conversation, it sounds progressive because we're always trying to think about, you know, how are we going to manage this? Who's going to stay at home? How, from a monetary perspective as well. But, we calculate whose salary is higher, the childcare costs, the stress. And then usually what happens, I mean, depending on the conversation, at least I've seen that eventually if the man is earning more, which is also the structurally, often it is the case that the man is earning more, then the woman does decide to stay at home or take a step back. And not because she's forced, not because of a lack of ambition or anything like that, but because that seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah. So can I just little jab at that a little bit?
Sure, sure, of course.
So yes, maybe at this point in time, and I don't mean to be personal at all, Appa, not at all. So I won't take Yan and Appa as the example all the time. But let's say there's a couple and you decide that couple decides that at this point in time, Misha earns more and his wife, partner, earns a little bit less. The
Hmm.
challenge that I have with that logic is that salaries don't remain static. And
Yeah.
let me take me as an example. I remember having a massive fight with my long ago ex-husband because I wanted to spend $30,000 on an education. And I
Hmm.
remember we had a fight because he thought it was a bad idea and I thought it was a good idea. And years later, I was able to see the wisdom of why he thought it was a bad idea and why I thought it was a good idea. He thought 30,000 was a big chunk out of my salary when I made 50,000. It was a huge chunk of my salary if I made only 50,000. Well, in the next, let's say 15 years, I tripled my salary, let's say.
Yeah.
So that 30,000 adjusted itself against a future earning potential. So my only sort
Hmm.
of little thought is when we talk about it or when couples talk about it, to not talk about it only at that point in time, this person's salary is higher. It's
Hmm.
what we think this person's career trajectory will be. Will they sell their company at a multiple of 10?
Hmm.
And that's why it's a better idea just, I'm not saying that it diminishes the hormonal change. I'm not at all saying that it gets in the way of having that instinct that you have. What I'm saying is
Mm-hmm.
factoring into a conversation that it's not a one-time salary, it's looking at it over a period of time, because I might be an exception, but I'm an example. If even though an
Mm-hmm.
exception, but an example of having made little, like in Hindi we say, ittusa, I made a little money
Mm-hmm.
and then I made a lot of money. But if I had made all my decisions based on only what I made at that point in time when I was 28 years old versus
Mm-hmm.
what I make now, the conversation would be very, very different if I had had the knowledge to have that conversation.
I mean, look, you can take Yan and me as an example because, as I said, like it's not very normal, at least in the Czech Republic, for women to go back to work 1 year after they, have a baby. And so, of course, these were things that we spoke about quite a lot around me wanting to go back and wanting to, earn. For me, monetary independence is very important, regardless of how much my partner earns. And these were things that we definitely spoke about. Um, but one thing that is important, and I wanted to touch on that earlier, was, you said it's just 2 years, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Those early years, I mean, now that I have Kian, I really, and now he's 4. It's the best. I personally feel like it's really the best years growing up, and they do need you emotionally, physically, psychologically, and it cannot be outsourced. I outsourced a lot of it, I will be honest. Like, I outsourced the cleaning and the stuff that I didn't want to do, which I base but to be honest, Jan and I both sat down and we calculated, firstly, how much we hate both of us doing the stuff, and
Yeah.
whether paying for it would be cheaper than us actually,
Arguing.
using that time to earn as well, arguing, of course. Um, and that feeling of, when, Kian tells me that he loves me, or, that I'm the best mom, you know, it's a feeling. I just really want to make sure that, through this episode, we're not forgetting that feeling, that emotional bond, that connection, because what I wanted to say is that a lot of people are not having kids. A lot of people in my circles are just not having kids because they've had this economic conversation, not to the level that we will get to, I think, and not that structurally, but just like, oh, it's going to take away from my earning, and so therefore I will not have kids because I have to stay home, or, that's, they don't even venture into that experience because of this, let's say, the societal expectation of moms being at home, moms being the primary caretaker, which exists obviously everywhere. I didn't know how much it exists everywhere. In fact, I feel like in India, actually, it's a lot better because there's, usually people have a lot of help. They have like a village around them, which in, societies like ours in the Czech Republic, as well in Singapore, sorry, Switzerland, it's very expensive to buy back that village, but it's
Mm-hmm.
worth it. I think we need to have that conversation of what you can buy back and what you
Yeah.
should spend money on, and do
Yeah.
that, the comparison of how much you earn versus what you're willing to spend on.
And that,
I just wanted to say that.
okay.
And one last thing I wanted to say is that sometimes people feel like if you're reducing the amount you work, you're like failing feminism in some way, and that's not the case. But at the same time, work is important. Having your own identity is important, and I think that's the way we need to look at it, not as like a societal, like you're being forced to do something.
Hmm.
Either way.
Hmm. Yeah. What I kind of wanted to reassure you, really, because I've been thinking about this ever since we had our first heated discussion about this. I feel like I want to reassure you that the emotions are there.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, Kian is 4, whereas Thomas's boys are 13, 17, and 19. And I can tell you, I love hanging out with them. I
Yeah.
love the feeling of being fully present. I love being the bonus parent or the
Mm-hmm.
bonus adult in their life. I enjoy when one of them wants to come to the kitchen while I'm cooking and just chat. And then I pretend to continue cooking because I want to have that conversation. So, in no way am I advocating for one side or the other.
Hmm.
What I'm advocating for is having a complete conversation,
Yep.
not only
I
an
completely
emotional
understand that.
conversation and not only
But
a
both.
financial conversation, but have a
Hmm.
complete conversation about it. That's sort of
Yep.
so there was this. So, you know, that I have now started working very closely with a Danish consulting firm. And so I'm exposed a lot to Scandinavia. So I have colleagues in Sweden, definitely in Copenhagen. And
They're
I
very
kind of,
equal, aren't they?
okay,
Or
so yeah, okay,
I want to
thanks for saying
understand
that.
because
So,
that's the perception that they are the
yes,
like the forefront of equality when it comes to parenting.
uh, that's what I thought too, till I started because of my curiosity with these colleagues, because several of my colleagues are, I'm going to say, around the age of 30, plus minus, you know, a little bit younger, a little bit older. And they all seem to have, this is anecdotal, 3 kids by the time they're 30. And yes, they
Hmm.
have a societal, not societal, let's say a governmental structure that allows
Hmm.
childcare. And so let's not compare that. But the thing that I stumbled upon was there's this Danish economist from, I don't know if he's Copenhagen Business School or University of Copenhagen, I'm not sure. But he came up with this finding from a series of studies that he called the child penalty. And he looked at, you know, the Scandinavian registry data, which is when are babies born, when do women come back to work. He did all of that, and he demonstrated that while men's earnings remain largely stable after parenthood, meaning becoming a father, parenthood, women's earnings drop significantly and do not fully recover. So even in the hallowed world of the Scandinavian countries, there's a divergence. They're going, men's continuous, male salaries, income continues to grow upwards, women stagnate or goes downward. So even in countries like the way that we imagine, oh, they're far more equal, the women's earnings drop and the gap continues to widen, and it widens permanently. It's not like, oh, it widens for a while and then it kind of converges again. Nope. So even that data shows that it is worth us, you, me, you and Jan, other people listening to this, just have a complete conversation. Not only about one part of it. And to me, one part is talking about it only in a window of 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years. Expand the horizon. And the second one is to make this conversation more complete by having, maybe we could call it a both and discussion. Both emotions and money count, both count,
Hmm.
and having a more complete discussion. So that's sort of my wish for us. And I wouldn't say that it's about failing feminism at all, not at all, because even when you look at the Swiss, I know Switzerland is a unique and special place, but you know, we have a pension system. They're made of pillars, and let's not get into that. But one of the pillars of the pension system is tied to salary and the number of
Hmm.
years you contribute to it. So if you didn't contribute to it for 5 years, and those are deductions and everything, well, that part-time decision compounds, and that part-time decision affects your life. And clearly in Switzerland, that pension gap as well widens and widens and widens. It's almost at 30 or 35% now. So that's not ideological. That's not emotional. That's a structural problem.
Yeah. I mean,
And you know,
before,
social conditioning is
sorry.
another structural problem. If you ask
Yeah,
me,
so
but yeah,
that's I think what I was going to touch on right now is there's identity, there's identity and social conditioning.
yeah,
So of course there are some women who want to be at home. I've met them, they really do want to be at home. They never wanted to work, as you said, they are that touch would never want to work. They've really taken that the role that society has given them. And
hmm,
what used to exist, right, is the person who like takes care of the house, takes care of
sure,
interior decorating. I don't know, like I sound a bit judgmental right now, but
okay, but
like what I mean is, they care about how, like how they dress and the cooking and the
mhm,
the now the trad wife basically. meme that's out there of being a trad wife, right? And serving their partner, right? There are people like that, not because of pressure. Not, I wouldn't say not because of the patriarchy, because I think it exists because of the patriarchy. But anyway, um,
Yes.
but it aligns with how they want to experience their life, motherhood. I can't talk for them. I don't know, but I've
Yes.
seen it. I've
Yes.
met these people, and they seem very content and happy, right?
Yeah.
We can't dismiss that. But this identity is also shaped by the context, right? Is how women see themselves, how men see themselves, how men see women, how women see men, and how
Yeah.
society still assigns, care or caretaking as feminine,
Hmm.
and work, earning as masculine. That is,
Sure.
we've come far, but we haven't come far enough when it comes to
Hmm.
this particular topic. I don't know if you watched this documentary that came out recently about the manosphere.
No,
No,
tell me.
I so it's about very hyper masculine men,
Uh-huh.
and how they see women, and how they and women who they are with have accepted their roles as the caretaker, as the man, as the provider, and they see women as the feminine caretaking, that their role is to have kids and take care of them. And
Sure.
there was one particular case where the the guy is not married to this woman. She is in a monogamous relationship with him, but he is not
But
in a
he
monogamous
is
relationship with her. And this is
okay.
understood by this couple, and she accepts it. And I was just thinking that she's not married to him, so all that he's earning, she's not even entitled to it. So this is going to end
Yes.
really badly for her, unless
Yeah.
they have some, I don't even know if you can have contracts before marriage now. But the whole thing was bizarre.
Yeah.
But what I got from that is that women are also accepting sometimes their role in
Huh.
this. And she even said, like, I don't want to get up and go to the hospital like I used to and have to deal with people. Like, I rather come here and do Pilates and, meet
Sure.
my girls for brunch and do those things, right? So it was very interesting. It was an interesting insight for me, because I don't know if it is true, because I know a lot of these women then are later on in life quite
Hmm.
upset that they didn't do something, or if this man leaves them, then what is their
Hmm.
identity without this man, right? So those kinds of things. It's a very interesting, extremely triggering documentary. So
Yeah.
watch with
Yeah.
caution. But
I
basically,
won't.
what I wanted to say is that it's about care. It's about how we see care. It's about the mental load. It's the emotional labor, that invisible part of bringing up a child, which often falls on the woman because of how society has made it to be. Like, it's very hard to find a man who's willing to share that with you, because they haven't even been brought up that way to even see the,
Yeah.
like, oh, we need to refill the toilet paper, or oh, there is a stain here, let me get this and clean
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I have a husband who's extremely caring and extremely willing to, let's say, see these things in that way. But I don't think he's naturally born with these skills. It's something that
Yeah.
has had to be taught.
So I often wonder. Um, so I am a couple decades older than you. And then when I look upwards, I have, a few decades with my mother and
Hmm.
Thomas's mother. And we use a term for Thomas's mother, which I find wonderful. So she's 90 now, right? And almost 90. She was and is proudly what she calls a professional housewife.
Yeah.
So she had no expectations of her husband changing nappies. It was her job, and she used the word job to make
Yep.
sure groceries were always there, holidays were planned. Maybe the 1950s style, hold a cocktail out for your husband when he
Yep.
comes back from work, right?
Yep.
But she did it well. She did it really well, like professionally. She didn't ever say this was not her job because they had clear gender roles.
Yes.
The reason I bring this up is the reason I bring it up is she has recently moved into from a nice big house that they lived in with a garden and a garage and that. She's moved into now at 90 into a 1-bedroom apartment with all her friends, and they all eat lunch and go to the cafe together. So she's
Uh-huh.
changed her life now at this stage. She can afford, and I use the word afford, to do all of this because she and her husband financially planned for the fact that she will outlive him, financially planned that as a professional housewife, she will not be contributing to savings, she will not be contributing to pension, she will not be contributing to investments. And they planned for her financial future.
Yes.
So
Yes.
my only constant ask of us in relationships and in couples is don't have a one-sided conversation. Have
Agreed.
a fully well-rounded conversation about that.
And I want to
Right?
add
So,
one more thing. We're also
yeah,
having this conversation very honestly because it is not possible to give the life you want your kid to have on one salary anymore. And I
yeah,
mean it in a
sure,
way that unless your partner has extremely high earning potential, which is possible, right? But
sure,
in a normal family, you
yeah,
need a two income household, like, and this
yeah,
is we're seeing that over and over in all countries, that to
yeah.
to afford a lifestyle that is normal, a two income
Mhm.
household is required. But yeah, I mean, we spoke about already, that women really, I mean, men have to be socialized now also because of things like this, to also see caregiving as an equal responsibility.
Mhm.
It's changing, but the outcomes I don't think have really caught up. I think a lot of it is, marketing, but what's
Mhm.
actually happening at home is very different. And the pay gap doesn't close because women are seen, and we can see this, without a kid as well. I mean,
Yeah,
this is why we
yeah,
have this podcast in the first place. Is
yeah.
the pay gap exists and it's alive and well, and having a kid just widens that gap.
Let's pull on another thread that you sort of touched upon, and I didn't pick up on it, which was about when you grow older. I definitely feel like I have grown older, which means you understand life differently. You understand the
Yeah,
place of parenting and motherhood differently, all of that, right? So the
yeah,
evolution.
yeah.
In my past life, and when I say past life, I mean in my previous job. So in in the partnership, I worked a lot with, let me call it older men, meaning at that time when I met them and got to be friends and got to know them, 56, 58, and occasional 59. Like, so mid to late 50s was the standard age range when I met these seasoned partners. And many, many of them had married women who stayed home then after the first child, second child, third child. And there
Professional
were
housewives.
many professional housewives, but not very professional because they came from a generation, the women, I mean, when women realized, you know what, even though I took on the role of caregiving, I don't want to be the only caregiver. I want you to participate. Right? So the roles shifted. It wasn't as clear cut as with Rosvita and her husband, so my mother in law and her husband. In theirs, it was clear cut. You do this, I do this. So financial planning also became easy because it was clear. There was a 50-50. You earn, I will run the family. Therefore, this is how we will do it. But when roles kind of get mushed up, it becomes
Uh-huh,
even more important to have that conversation. And these
uh-huh.
guys, I have a particular person in my mind that I'm thinking of. His wife of 25 years, so he was 57, they decided to separate. So after
That is the
25
case.
years, that is a very, in quotes, normal
Important.
thing that happens. Women sort of wake up and say, you know what? I know we had this agreement, but I want to break the agreement. And with divorce rates across Europe are at about 40%. So
Yeah, that's not a
in
little.
that's not a little, right? That's every second-ish marriage. And I feel like I've been married and divorced, and I've had to start my life over and over again. Luckily, there was no impact to children. But I remember a point in my life when I was, I don't know, 18, I think, or 17 or something like that. I remember thinking, oh my God, I want 5 kids. I don't know where that number came into my head, right? But I never thought about it, and I wasn't educated as well to think about it as, can you afford those kids? And then later in my 20s, I was already divorced. I wish I'd had a conversation about affordability after divorce, right? So even though we all want to have love and romance, the data
Mm.
shows us that only 50% of us can have love and romance. The other 50 won't have it. So how do you plan for a possibility? It doesn't mean that it will happen. It is a possibility. That's what data tells us. And that, I think, is my point, is about financial independence in that possibility.
Look, I
I know it's
agree with
tough.
you on this. Yeah, I completely agree with you because I think people don't think about negative outcomes. I
Yes.
unfortunately do. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the best, but I mean, I did tell you a personal story, and I'm not sure how young. I'm just gonna put it as a disclaimer here. I'm gonna say it, but I might need to come back to you about whether I can actually have this in the podcast. Okay, so I'm just
Okay.
putting it
All
here.
right. Tell
Junie,
me
if
the
you're
story.
listening, there will be you will have to wait. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Um, so I mean, I think about these things. Look, my parents didn't have the best relationship. I was brought up in a quite a tumultuous home, and so for me, this was like my default. It was like, I love you, you love me, but like, how long is this gonna last? That was the way that I am very cynical when it comes to these things. So when Jan and I, we decided we wanted to be together, we weren't married yet. I was in Germany, he was here, and we were still thinking we wanted to buy an apartment together because it was a good investment opportunity. And I was living here part time in Germany, so I just wanted to come home. And we found this apartment, and basically my family and me, we paid for most of the apartment. And at that point, I wanted to talk about ownership of this apartment because we were not married, so it's
Good.
not default 50-50. And I remember even my father, who had really helped me to pay for a lot of it, was like, how can you bring this up? Like, it's of course it's going to be 50-50. Like, you're a partner. How can you go into a relationship already, splitting your assets, according to, it sounds crazy, but according to how much was paid for it.
Yeah. It
And
doesn't
to
sound
me,
crazy.
it doesn't. Like, to me, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. It's like, to me, I was just like, but I don't understand. Like, we paid for X amount, so we should get X amount. He paid for Y, so he should get Y. But, it's not, we're not even married. Like, what if happens if the relationship breaks, like, before we get
Mhm.
married? He's like, how can you talk about a relationship breaking before it's even started? And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, you had such a, like, your relationship, didn't you learn nothing? Like, I don't want to say it like this, but like, to me, it was just like, I know I just can't understand some of these things. Like, to me, it's so
Yeah.
obvious.
Yes.
And I don't know why we must have like these rose colored lenses, around these things, because I mean, let's look at the world, like, look at like the absolute, for a lack of better word, I think, like, craziness that's happening around the world. Like, is anything surprising? To
Yeah.
me, nothing is
You know,
surprising.
a few weeks back was International Women's Day,
Yeah.
and a colleague and I had a little banter. Let's say, it was a big group, and we got asked questions, and we each answered the question from our perspective. So he answered as the primary breadwinner in his house. He has a wife
Mhm.
and a baby and a new baby on its way. So in another 2 weeks, like that. And I answered from my perspective, where I have rather an independent life financially and a
Mhm.
50% life parenting. So it's a different dynamic. And there was something else that something that he said that I've found is something that we don't talk about very often in these dynamics of, oh, touch wood, I don't have to work environment. He said, I feel the tremendous burden of being the primary breadwinner. I
Yes.
have been,
Yes.
I have been socialized to be the man. I have been
Yes.
socialized that it is my job and my responsibility, but I feel the burden of Lisa staying home and taking care of those 2 kids. And if I can't make this business work, or if I get fired from a job, or if I lose a contract, everything rests on me. And I wish in the
Agreed.
world there was a better way to have risk mitigation, because this is a very risky structure to have.
I see this also with Yad, right? Like, I mean, I see it with him, even though, I mean, I would say that I'm earning, and like now with another kid as well. I don't know, like if I don't say if I don't work for a year, yes, I will be paid by the government some, measly amount,
Mhm.
which will keep me going. But at the end of the day, if he loses his job, then for us it is a financial risk, right? Because
Mhm.
one of us will either he will have to find a new job or I will have to go back to work. But it is a discussion that you need to have. But if you have no job, like, and like this is where I see,
Yeah.
a lot of families that are stuck in this like very, and I don't like using the word toxic very much, but I do think these toxic relationships, because really one of them cannot leave, because if they leave, they have nothing.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's basically a power game. And on the other side, the man is also like, you also look at the man as the only sole provider.
Yeah.
So then everything is on his plate, like that amount of stress, or is also not great for doing
Yeah.
something with a clear mind, and actually
Yeah.
performing at your best, right? If you're under immense amounts of pressure, to be
And
the only, and what about their growth? I hear a lot
yeah.
about like women like going, like I'm one of them, going on my journey of self-healing, and wanting to find out who I
And your
am, who I
yoga
truly
retreat.
am. And my yoga retreat next week, and I can do all of those things. And but at the same time, I wonder, like, what if tomorrow Jan decides he wants to find himself? What
Yeah.
happens? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, yes, it will definitely be a conversation between, like, so are you going to give up your job and like find yourself? But do you know what I mean? We don't,
Yes, I
I don't see
do.
it. And I know, and Jan has, spoken to me quite openly about the fact that at some point he also wants to take a step back and just like travel for a bit and like see the world. And I always wonder, but when? Because like his earning potential right now is at its highest. And I'm saying these as real things that I've thought about, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's his choice. If he decides he wants to take a break, it's his prerogative and his choice to do so.
Yeah.
And
Because he's earned the choice.
yes, of course,
And
because he's
that's
earned the
that's
choice.
exactly. And to me, that's the important, like let's say the magic, the in there is you have to earn the yoga retreat. You have to earn the choice to so Thomas, as an example, he took I'm going to say a substantial change in his lifestyle in his 50s from his work to be fully present for the kids. But
Yeah.
he earned that right. He allocated not only brain space, heart, emotion, hormones, but he allocated finances to it because he
Hmm.
planned that when the kids get to school, middle school, high school, he wants to be fully present for them. Right.
Yeah.
So, but he earned that. And I think that's an important word because often I hear, with, again, I'm not saying it's not true, but I want to add. So I hear, babies need their mothers, right? I hear that. No problem. Yes, babies need their mothers. But then it makes me wonder, and I have not done in-depth studies or research around it. What about gay fathers? A child with growing up with two men, right?
Yeah.
What happens to babies need their mother? Do babies need nurturing? So is
Correct.
biology the only factor? Because when you look at it from a biology perspective, I found an really, I think you pointed it out to me, that heterosexual women are
Yes,
behind men, sure, in earning
of
trajectory.
course.
No problem, right? But they're also behind lesbian women. And
Yes,
that's
correct.
insane to me. And
Because
my
they
guess, yeah, go ahead. What's your guess?
no, because I mean they just, again, we spoke all about the societal conditioning of bringing up children. It's seen more equally. Both women take equal. It's the combined income which is higher, right? Because it might
Yeah.
be that in a heterosexual couple, the combined earning is higher, but because of one person earning more, usually the man. But in a lesbian couple, it's more equal. I
Mm.
wonder. I wonder gay men. I actually haven't. Gay men with kids. It would be interesting. I can only think of Neil
So
Patrick Harris, who must be very rich, but
that's not fair,
but
right?
that's not
But I
fair.
think very often in ladders, right? Because I did a bunch of studies for my doctorate around race and prejudice and privilege as well. And so my brain automatically puts people in a ladder. So, you have
Hmm.
white men, we know that classic right on top. But now I'm beginning to think in this ladder of life, gay men and lesbian women higher than women.
I
I'm
would
like,
say
wow.
so. I
Okay,
would
so
say
let's
so,
take an
for
example.
sure.
Okay, let's take an example and kind of be patient with the numbers because you and I both don't need to get hung up on the specific numbers. So let's say we have a couple. You can make it a she couple, a he she couple, doesn't matter. So let's say he earns 100,000, and she earns 80,000. Okay. So together they decide, for the first 3 years of our baby's life, you should step down. So she steps down for 3 years. So on paper, completely rational, right? Because he earns 100, she earns 80, so a notch below. So over a three-year period, sure, he earns more, so why not? And they've also done the math, which most couples nowadays, because we have all sorts of calculators and Instagram wisdom and everything, they even calculate, can they afford the pause, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they say 3 years at 80,000, 240,000 in direct salary. Okay. Can we compensate 240,000 in earnings over 3 years in some way by either adjusting our lifestyle? Because
Mm-hmm.
we're earning 240,000 less. So we adjust our lifestyle. We take one holiday less. So we buy one piece of jewelry less, or we don't buy the KitchenAid mixer,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, don't
Yeah,
renovate
yeah.
the garage, whatever, right? But that to me is the visible loss. And by the way, great job already. Anybody who's already calculating this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're already 10 steps ahead by calculating, can you afford the pause? And what does that pause mean in terms of adjustment to your lifestyle? But here's my challenge to the second step that most people don't calculate. So let's say that she had not stayed at home and she'd gone back to work, and her salary would have grown higher than inflation. So let's say 3 to 5% every year. So at the end of 3 years, she would have probably been at 90,000.
Yeah.
Now she returns to work again at 60%. So again, she's below at 40,000 or so because she's going to work at 60%. So instead of actually earning up to 90,000, she's earning up to 50,000,
Mm-hmm.
which over a 10-year window can come up to what? 500,000. Doesn't matter which way you do the math, even if it's not 500 and it's 300,000. So it's 240,000 for a 3-year break and another 240,000 because of the fact that you've reduced your trajectory. So in total, a 500,000 in difference.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say, do the first part of the discussion. But then why
Yeah.
don't you plan the second part of the discussion? We just have that. What will this look like? Because when you fast forward 25 years and you're my friend from my old partnership who's been married for 25 years, and then they decide to divorce, what happens then? Yes, everything is
Especially if you
50
don't have
50.
prenups, for example,
Correct. You don't
like
have,
Jan and I don't have a prenup. People will say
yes,
50-50, but I don't know if
yeah.
it's really 50-50. Do people really get 50%? Because I know in the
Um,
Czech Republic it is 50, and I just really want to ask because I don't know. Because I know in India, for example, it's not. You
yeah,
can
it's
you
not.
can fight
So, from
in
personal,
court.
sad personal experience and from others' experiences anecdotally, so I don't want to say that this is a researched number, it's 50-50 in spirit. But if you get a good lawyer and a good tax consultant, you can adjust those. So, ultimately, I'm not saying learn to play the system and the system is your marriage. I'm not saying that. I'm saying is just have the conversation. I mean, be a
I
grown
agree.
up, wear the big
Yeah.
girl panties, and just go have that conversation. Sit down with a calculator and plan what that might look like and how are we going to compensate? Because that little 3-year window actually has a
It leads.
25-year impact and it compounds into 500,000.
Yeah,
That's
because
all.
it's
That's
true.
my
Like
point.
you're completely right. Like when I was, to be honest with you, when I'm looking at this, but I come from a very privileged, backing where I was thinking about, okay, if I stay back, then to boost my income, because if I don't, then I will do like some kind of like an executive course where that's going to put my CV at a higher place, and then I'm going to
Sure.
apply from that position. But it's also investment to be, and you need to have that ability to invest further to
Yeah,
get back to your earning potential, right? Like that's what because
sure.
when I'm thinking about it as well, I think about it exactly. In fact, like this time when I had a conversation with my manager also about my raise, I made it very clear. I was like, but I'm going to be away for a year, so please give me a raise now, because that's going to actually count towards my additional, the money that I get from my company when I'm on maternity,
Hmm.
right? So I was pushing for a higher increase
Yeah,
this
excellent.
year, for that simple reason that I was going to be away for 3 years. And I didn't, these were the things I was thinking about, more like, I didn't think it in the way that you have put it, but it came instinctively to me, because I knew that I would be out of the workforce for 1 year.
Hmm.
And I knew that that salary increase, or the bump that I was going to be getting, was also going to be playing into my bonus and all of those things, so that I would be better suited to take that year
Yeah.
that I wanted to.
But can I ask, from your circle and your group of friends and the media that you consume,
Yeah.
is there even the idea of scenario planning? So scenario planning maybe is a consultant speak for plan A, B, C, D. So plan A, I'll be off for 3 years. Plan B, I'll be off for 2 and we pay for childcare. Plan C, I'll be off for 1 and we pay for double the childcare for 2 kids. Do you do scenario planning at all?
I do. The thing is, I think people are not in very good relationships. I mean, that's a different topic altogether. But I feel like a lot of people can't talk
Okay.
about these things, like, or like they're
Okay.
like a bit taboo topics, and like you don't bring these things up. It's like, for me, I don't know. I bring everything up with Jan, and then I test it, like, to see if there's
Yeah.
something we can. But I think scenario planning, it should be like part of your relationship, if you're deciding on things. And my friends, like the ones from India, or like the ones that I've kept in touch with long term, they
Yeah.
don't have kids, nor do they want kids, I feel. So
Hmm.
that's another let's say, extreme. And it's because of a multitude of reasons. But they're quite high earners. Most of them are quite high earners. Even if they're in a relationship, they're quite, they were called Henrys, high earners, not rich yet. And we want
Oh,
to keep
wow.
but we want to keep that high earner status. And bringing a kid, it immediately adds expenses, which I think also, by
Yeah.
the way, we should look into this. When you're saying it's not only the income loss, but it's also
Yeah.
that you end up spending more, like,
Sure.
to have a kid,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is which means that your earning potential needs to increase in proportion to how much you're spending on your child, which I think
Yeah.
people are not. So of course that
Yeah.
puts financial burden. But most of my friends don't want to have kids, because
Yeah.
they don't want a cut in their lifestyle. Or
So,
so that's where I'm at with my group of friends.
there's going to be an unintended consequence of that as well. Now that we're talking about it, it's kind of clicking in my brain. The more people who don't have children, okay, yes, bad for the economy, sure. You will have lesser empathy for motherhood
Yeah,
because,
of
hey,
course,
I'm
that's.
able to work, right? So I think in
Yes.
2023, the Nobel
Yes,
Prize
that's
winner
a huge
for,
pain.
yeah, the Nobel Prize winner for economics is Claudia Golden. And I was very impressed that the Nobel Committee decided to give her a Nobel Prize because her topic that she has spent her career, her life on, her life's work, is the long run evolution of women's participation in the labor market. And she looked
Yeah.
at 2 centuries worth of data, right? When
Oh,
women participated, maybe undocumented, or during the industrial revolution, there's
yeah.
logs of the kind of employment patterns that women had, and it declined after industrialization, and it rose again with education. Like the way you said, I had the privilege of educating myself a little bit more, and it also further increased, like this U shape. It further went up over this 200-year window when gig economy came into place. So women
Yes.
could do part-time work, women could be 2 hours at the front desk of something, right? And so she said there is this motherhood penalty that you
Yeah.
pay because the the conversation with women who are not having children, the ones who I feel, if we're not cautious of it, we will not have the empathy, and then we won't work on the systems that need to change.
I mean, people are fighting for planes without kids. Like, I'm like, when did public transport become like something that you can like say no, I want it? And then there's this very common in the motherhood in the motherhood
Okay.
community. It's like
Yeah.
you can have a child-free life, but you can't have a child-free existence, because obviously kids cannot be kids anymore. They have to have their
Yeah.
iPads and be glued to their iPads while everybody,
Yeah.
so if they make a sound, it's a problem. But this is a real issue because
Yeah.
the empathy is missing. And
Yeah.
the more the choice, I'm totally pro-choice. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I
Yeah.
want
Sure.
people to have choices to have kids or not kids. But at the same time, you were a kid at some point. I don't
Yeah.
think you were the most well-behaved child who was like with their,
Yeah.
and at the same time, this is what's being expected of kids, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's also the other side where there's a lot more things I can take my kid to. Like now there's even mom raves, that start at
I
12,
love it.
and you take your child and it's like a alcohol free, uh, like
Oh,
with all the
Thomas
toddlers.
and I
It
went
doesn't
for a
have to be. It doesn't have to be. Oh,
yeah.
okay. So there's even
We
like
went to a
artists that,
daytime rave for old people with a lot of alcohol, but it was a
yeah.
rave for
So
old people.
now you have it also for with kids, and it's great. Like you also have those options.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're right. The empathy is a huge thing because what's happening is that literally the opposite is going to happen. So because
Yeah.
there's less empathy, there's going to be a return of the trad wife situation where the women need to
Hmm.
take that role, and the women that don't fit into that that glove, or like are not able to, like, I can try to trad wife, but I will fail miserably.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
don't know how to be that woman. Like
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and there are some people who can easily go into that and like take care of the house or whatever. It's just I was never taught, so I can't do it. But what I'm trying to say is that the people that don't fit into the glove, they will be the ones that suffer because they're not feminine enough,
To
and at the
work.
same time they're not masculine enough for work.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
stuck in that middle part where you're too assertive, not assertive enough. Your identity is a bit hazy.
So I think often about if I had not left India in the late 90s, what would my life be like now? Almost 30 years later, what would my life be like? Because when I look at the people that I don't have too many friends in India right now, but when I look at people's lives, my cousins, people that I know, they they have an ecosystem around them, not
Yeah.
just the not just the mechanics, like somebody to cook, clean, drive, grocery shop, online delivery. I don't mean the mechanics, but even people who live far away from their parents, they have an ecosystem around them. And I think that is something that we are needing to do if we want to be financially bolstered as well. Because if you have a support network,
Yeah.
and I know I'm harping on the finance part of it because that is my job. I'm going to. But the more you have a network and you're interconnected, where that dependence is a choice, you're choosing to take care of each other's children, or you're choosing to share a nanny, for example, a nanny share concept. All of that helps that balance sheet of expenses, which then
Mhm.
reduces the gap that you have in earnings. And that's what I'm saying.
Agreed.
Have
I
that
think you said it
conversation.
beautifully. You said it beautifully. I think we're living in the wrong countries for that, because I really do believe. No,
Yeah.
I would love to have this, but where are these people? Because like
Yeah.
sometimes I'm also tired of being the only one that is initiating contact, initiating
Yeah.
relationship. You don't want to be that person, right? And
Yeah.
I get that everybody's busy in India and or even Malaysia and like these collectivist countries. Yes, not everyone is perfect, and you don't have to have the deepest relationship, but people are just more open. Like
Mhm.
they're more like, okay, we can be a community, or it's okay, I'll even offer, like, hey,
Yeah.
your kid can stay here. Nobody even offers. Like you might have invited
Yeah.
someone to your house like 5 times, you will never get an invite back. And
Yeah.
to me this is bizarre, and I know I talk about this with Jan quite often. It's a really bizarre like concept to me. So from a
Yes.
collectivist to, and this is actually something I've spoken with Jan about as well, is that in the long run, this is where the community, because literally everything I need to do, I need to buy it back. So it's a cost
Mhm.
to me.
Mhm.
And Czech Republic is better in the way that still services are affordable.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
move to like Nordic countries, you move to Switzerland, then it's like, I'll cut my own hair.
Yeah.
It's who
You
pays that
cut
much
me off.
money to cut your
Yeah.
hair?
Yeah.
Like,
But
it's
see,
ridiculous.
this is exactly, I think, the type of conversation that I wish for my friends and my colleagues and the world around us to have. Is let's not hide behind being a trad wife. It's okay, own it, be a trad wife, but then also keep the budget, because that's what trad wives did. That's what professional
Yeah.
housewives did. It's
Hmm.
perfectly okay if you did. You want to be the person who shows up to work every day, 4 days a week. Be that person. Totally okay. You want to be the kind like me who worked long hours because I could and I wanted to and I was ambitious. Be that person. All I'm saying
Yes.
is be that person and have the
And the
conversation
con.
about money.
Yeah.
So it's just the and. So
Can we
as
actually
we
do
kind
the
of,
example? Because we did the
yeah,
example actually, sorry, I know
sure.
we wanted to talk about that, is that we did the example with the couple that stayed home,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Like, and let's do the example of the couple that say doesn't, or like takes like even
Sure.
a approach to work which is partial or whatever it is.
Okay. Let's do that. So again, I do he, she, but whatever. Couple A, couple B, like that, right? So let's say that they both are at the same starting salary, plus minus. We're not talking about a dramatic difference. We're talking about 5-10% plus minus of each other. And when they get pregnant, their decision is the woman will take the whatever's allowed by the government, time wise. And then the man will take the maximum that's allowed. But fundamental principle behind that is maximize both genders, both people, both partners taking that leave. And then when you decide to extend, both extend and split that time off. Now, in this scenario where the time is split, they both are reducing their income potential evenly ish. So, is it equitable? Probably not. But we're still talking about a slight reduction because they're both reducing it temporarily, which means equally important is both are still connected to their work. I think it's impossible to think that a woman can take 3 years off and then just pop right back into work. It's
Look at
impossible.
where we are today. Even like with
Yeah,
the age of AI and stuff, like if I go back and come back, I'll be entering a completely different
correct.
workforce. That's what I meant by executive education. That's why I was talking about that, because I was like,
Yeah,
I will need to
great.
catch up.
Yes, right? So your attachment to work will stay equally if you both reduce time at the same time. You're not, you take 3 years off and Jan takes 1 month off. I'm just giving the
Hmm.
proportion. So if you split the time a little bit more evenly, and then let's say that you go back to work not at 3 years, but at the 2 year mark. And the man continues to have some flexibility. Why? Because studies have shown that when a man re enters the workforce, his penalty is lower than when a woman re enters the workforce. So the short term stress, much higher. I think both parents have much higher short term stress because both have reduced income is a little bit lower. Childcare needs to be there's a baby there. The childcare bill might feel heavy because a woman has gone back to work, but their earning curves actually stay closer and their pension gap is much narrower. So for a short term is still 2 to 3 years, right? We're not talking about 1 or 2 months. For a short term period of inconvenience, the
Hmm.
longer term, and I don't mean just earnings, it's also when one person in a relationship has all the power financially, it changes the dynamics of the relationship 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in.
Hmm.
Similarly, if one person is, I have a friend who says this all the time, I am mummy, so I know best. And I keep thinking, why? Your husband doesn't have a brain? Can't he parent? So when you have disproportionate power, your relationship also changes. So my
Yeah.
scenario for you is really the short-term struggle. Nobody's saying that there isn't, but the longer-term impact of the curve being less steep, the gap
Hmm.
being narrower. And
Yeah.
is that worth it? Just have the conversation as a couple.
Hmm. And I mean, maybe I'll ask one question about earning
Mhm.
potential, right? Because this example started at a place, I would say it doesn't only have to be that like it could be, for example, Jan is earning more than me right now. Does that mean it's going to be that way for the rest of our lives? We don't know, right? Because I
Yeah.
feel, at least for me, that our earning potential is similar. Like if I
Mhm.
really decided today that I will do this, like nobody can
Right.
really stop me, right? But say the earning potential, like I know it's hard to say because earning potential is a hard one to think about, but
Mhm.
sometimes in, like, say, investment banking versus, let's say, an arts field, right? Yes,
Sure.
you might become a very famous artist, but the chances that the investment banker is going to bring home more money, given the situation or the societal, like the way that it's valued, is higher, right? So,
Sure.
what would a couple I know you would say to have the conversation, but at the same time, like, how is a couple like that, where maybe the earning potential is lower in one situation versus the other, but it's
Okay.
again, it's
Yeah.
a
So I'm not being prescriptive at all, because every couple needs to have the conversation however they want to have it. Maybe what I am being is insisting that you have the conversation.
Mhm.
So if you are that sort of couple, it shouldn't just be like, I earn less, I'll
I
stay
earn
home.
less.
That's a
Yeah.
default discussion. That's a default decision. And what I'm saying is keep the default, but add conversation to it. Yes, does
Mhm.
it make financial sense for the person who has lower potential as well as current earning to stay home? Absolutely yes. But don't take it as a that's the way it is. Have the conversation, because the conversation could then be about how are we going to adjust my future, because we may not be together in 10 years. So what will
Yeah.
happen to me then? Right? So how do we plan for that? And that planning could be things like, I'm making this up as an example, but having the conversation to say, I'd like to get some education. I'd like to go to this specific art school to be a curator. I don't know, whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah, I
So
understand.
having that
Mm.
conversation of, if I'm a full-time caregiver, what happens to my brain, and therefore what also happens to my earning?
Mhm.
So
No,
maybe
I
to
understand that.
kind of put a little bow on it, mine is, don't go with the default. It might be the default and it might be the obvious answer. Challenge the default simply by having a conversation, and have the conversation maybe not once, have the conversation every couple of years. Have the conversation when there's a life change. A life change is, as an example, one partner got promoted. That means you have more income. Maybe life changes, you're pregnant with your third child. That's a life change. Life changes, we've now bought a house together. Right? Stuff like that. So every time there is a life change, just make it a habit to have a conversation instead of staying in neutral gear and default mode.
Yeah. No, I completely understand that. I think a lot of these things, because I think about them pretty much on my own. Like, these are things that I think I mean, I have to, maybe my parents, you know, my mom was also a working woman, right? So I had that already, in me, and it was never even a question about whether women would work. It was
Yeah.
like, in fact, it was like, for example, my aunt didn't really work, and it was always a topic that she didn't, or she decided to stay home. For me, I'm an
Yeah.
only child. A lot of my dreams were channeled through me. So it was never even a thing that I thought about, is like, I'm not going to work, or
Yeah.
I'm gonna do something. Like, I didn't know what else I was gonna do with my life if I wasn't gonna be working.
Sure. Yeah.
So, like, yeah. So for me, these are things that come naturally. I've never been the person who's grown up to be like, I want to be a mom immediately. So these were all things that in fact, being a mom is something that I had to, like, you know. Uh, kind of think about and wonder what that means for me. So it's a very, very interesting topic. And I mean, looking at the differences, of course, like, a lot of things come to my mind as to, like, even when you say, oh, like, we need to take things equally, right? Like, if we take a step back equally between the woman and the man. And my brain immediately
Mhm.
went to, yes, but, like, thinking about Jan and me, but I'm like, yeah, but Jan has a higher earning potential. So right now, so if he takes a step back, then, like, what does that mean? But how will he take a step back? And I immediately caught myself having empathy for him,
Yeah.
but less empathy when I was thinking, but
For you.
it's easier for me. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's easier for me because
Yes.
I'm not at that position.
Yeah, sure.
So it was just interesting how my brain went there, even though we were talking about it. What does
Yeah.
that mean? What does equally stepping back mean for me as a person
Yes.
who has a corporate career at the moment versus him who is a kind of a CEO of his company, right? I don't know what that
Let's
means.
let's do like a little short list as we wrap up around maybe
Yeah.
questions to have a discussion about so that you get out of default neutral mode to actually engaging into a conversation that is about the long term and not just the short term of 1 or 2 years. Let's put in that frame, right? So one of the questions would be what you just brought up. What does this mean? What does equi mean? Go have a conversation about what equi
Yeah.
means. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be at a chore level, it could be at an investment level. But having that conversation about what does it mean for us as a couple? What does equal and fair and equitable with no resentment? What does that look like? And maybe thinking about those scenarios. I would, because I feel like I wanted this episode to be about this. I want a conversation for couples who are planning for the long term. So, what happens to future contributions to a pension fund? Or how do we plan for
On that
my old
sense.
age? Right. So, what happens to my old age? Not just your old age and our old age, but my old age. So make it about you, not we, me. So for a change, I'm advocating for me, not we. Because what happens if we separate? And that is a conversation to have. How, yes, it's fine and fair, or well, fine and easy to say it's 50-50. No, let's talk about it. Because what is 50-50? I can give you examples of several colleagues who, as part of the divorce settlement, gave their home to the other spouse to make it fair and balanced. But that had huge psychological impact on them.
Mhm.
Having the conversation about when do I return full time? Is there a possibility to extend it? Is there a possibility to reduce it? What does it look like for you as the other person? Would you like to? Because I know so many young fathers now who want to be home with their kids. And the burden of being the sole provider is so heavy on them because they actually want to be home. They want to spend the first year 4, year 8, whatever it is, with their kids. But this conversation has no space for fathers to stay home. And I
Mhm.
think this conversation should. Right? And maybe one last sort of overall thing, because I am really advocating for a long-term conversation. So it's not a conversation that happens one time. It happens multiple times during life events. So having this conversation of long-term wealth, and not for us, but for you and for me. And then there is an us, of course,
Mhm.
that comes from it. And I'm advocating for that because there's data that shows that the gap widens and the fact that there is a penalty. So if there is, just address it. Just do something about it.
I mean, having the conversation and having openness in a relationship to be able to have these conversations is really a prerequisite, and we should really think about that. I mean, a lot of this comes down to if you're bringing a child into this world, it's important that you are with with the right person to be able to have these conversations because these are really important questions. And as you said, it's a conversation that keeps happening, so the outcomes might change, and I think
Yeah.
that's really key.
Yeah. As we bring this episode to an end, I have 3 actions. So we talked about some of the questions that you can use for your own thinking as well as a discussion with your partner. I also want you to have 3 actions. And Abba, I'm looking at you. This means you as
Hmm.
well. Download your pension statement, your retirement statement, and just understand it. That's all. Just understand it. You don't have to say, I contributed, didn't contribute, I will not, nothing. Just download it, read it, and understand it. That's all.
Hmm.
Okay. Second one, go have some of those conversations, which you and Jan are already ahead of the curve. You're already having them, but factor in the long term modeling.
Hmm.
And then my last one really is please share this episode with your friends And I'm looking at you again, who this will be an unpopular opinion with, but
Mm-hmm.
share it with a person who's planning a child so that they're
Mm-hmm.
already navigating. And maybe it'll help with the questions and these actions to have that conversation. Because motherhood is powerful, but the power without any of this structure, it's on shaky ground. So I started with this, so I will end with this. I don't want to leave these things hanging. I never, ever, ever want to hear again, I don't need to work. And I know that sounded whiny, but no, you do need to work. All right, Appa. See you next time.
That's a wrap for this episode of Negotiator. If you like this episode, share it forward and help us all rise together. Your voice matters. Stand up for yourself. And when you can, stand up for someone else too. Until next time, this is Negotiator, empowering you to become unstoppable.